Here's how I made my liquid gown, skirt, and top set. You'll first need 6 yards of this liquid chiffon. I ordered mine from Zula Fabrics. I'm going to be using this rotary cutter, but scissors would work just fine. The rotary cutter just makes it so much easier. I'm going to begin by cutting up all the fabric pieces. The first piece I'm going to create is the little sliver that goes in the front of the skirt. We're creating this little triangle. It's a 35-inch by 6-inch piece. And we're going to create 2 of those. So I did one on one side, and then I'm going to the other side of the fabric to do the other piece. After we finish that, I'm going to create the middle panel for the skirt. This is a bigger triangle. It's 15 inches wide at the top, and then I kind of cut it at an angle going in, and then come on the other side to make the other end of the triangle. So it kind of looks like a giant leaf. Next, I'm creating the panel for the belt. So this is a 8-inch wide piece, and then you just cut all the way down the length of the fabric again. Next, we're going to cut 2 10-inch panels. This is going to be drapery for the belt, and then there's going to be another one that's going to be drapery for the top. Next, I'm cutting these slivers for the straps for the top. We're going to need 2 of these. They're about 35 inches long and about 4 to 5 inches wide. These are going to be the straps that tie the bandeau top on, so they can be shorter or longer just depending how you want them. Now I'm cutting out the pieces for the bandeau top. I'm going to need 4 of these, so we're going to cut one, flip, and then do the other side. And then you're going to cut 2 more, reverse, and you're going to place front sides facing each other. Next, we're going to work on the main skirt portion. You're going to measure 6 inches at the top and then cut this massive triangle down at an angle. And then you're going to flip the fabric to the other side and then do the same thing going back. You should be able to get about 5 panels out of the rest of the fabric. Next, you need the waistband for the skirt. I'm using this knit elastic. I just measured my waist and then cut a piece. You don't necessarily need a mannequin to create this dress, but it definitely helps a lot. So these are the 5 giant triangle panels that we made. This is going to create the skirt, and this is the middle triangle piece that we made for the middle panel and the 2 little triangles for the little side pieces. I used a basic Brother sewing machine, and that's pretty much all you'll need to make this dress. We're going to start the sewing with the hem that goes on the edges. This is called curly lettuce hem, and you use fishing line to create that curl pattern. You take the fabric and fold it over the fishing line and then sew a zigzag stitch over to secure the fishing line in place. There are lots of detailed tutorials on how to do this on YouTube, but basically this is what it looks like. I just place the spool of fishing line on the ground and then kind of pull from it as I sew. Once you get down to the pointed end of the panel, I line up the fishing line with the previous fishing line on the other side and then come back up the panel. So this is basically how it's going to kind of end up looking. So this is the finished look of the middle panel that goes down the middle of the skirt. And then I'm going to do the same exact curly hem to the other 2 little triangle panels. All right, now it's time to work on the main skirt. I'm going to take the front piece and do the curly hemming on just the front side. And then taking the panel that's next to it, I'm going to sew it front side to front side using a straight stitch, so it's going to look something like this. And then you're just going to do that the same to all the panels until you reach the other side, and then don't forget to add curly hem to the other side. Next, I'm going to sew a channel for the elastic band, so I'm going to fold over the top half of the skirt and create a channel to stick the elastic through. I'm going to do this same exact channel on the middle panel triangle on the skirt. Next, I'm going to use this little tool, I forget what it's called, but it's to pull the elastic through the channel. So I'm doing this on the main skirt section that we just made, and then I'm going to add that middle triangle panel as well. Once you get the main skirt and the middle panel onto the elastic, we're going to sew the ends together. Now we're going to sew on those 2 little triangle panels we made. You're just going to place it right over the gap between the middle panel and the main skirt. I fold over the top and then pin it into place. And then I'm going to do a straight stitch right over the seam. I'm going to do that same exact thing to the other side with the other triangle panel till it looks something like this. Now we're going to work on the belt. This is the 8-inch piece that we cut. We're going to fold it in half, front sides facing each other, and we're going to sew about halfway down the middle so that the 2 ends are left open. Once you completed the stitch, you're going to inside the belt out through the opening holes on either side. And then you're going to take a stitch and kind of close that opening shut. So you're just going to sew wherever you ended the stitching on either side. So basically you sewed a seam down the middle, inside it out, and then closed it off on either side with this straight stitch and left the ends open. The ends that are left open, you're cutting into an angle and then sewing that curly hem onto the edges. This is going to be the pieces that tie in the back of the belt. It should end up looking something like this, and then you just tie it over the skirt waistband. Now we're going to sew the drapery onto the front. So you're going to take your 10-inch panel and you're going to start draping. I'm using lots of pins to kind of see how I want it to lay. I'm being very careful to pin the drapery just to the belt because I'm going to take the belt off to sew the drapery in place. I just use a straight stitch to sew right over the pins that I pinned in to hold that kind of pretty ruching right where I want it. The ends that are left hanging, I'm going to cut into this pretty little leaf shape, and then I'm going to be adding that curly hem onto those pieces as well. It should end up looking something like this. Next, I'm creating a little fold effect in the front by putting a little stitch in the fabric, creating a ripple effect. Now it's time to work on the bandeau top. We're going to take these two pieces and our straps and some elastic, and I'm just going to go ahead and sew this elastic onto the edges. I'm using an overlock stitch to make this bandeau top, but you can actually do this with a zigzag stitch, so it's not completely necessary. I just have one, so I used it. Now we're going to add the straps to the bandeau top. I'm putting the strap inside the little piece that we made and then sewing along the edge, and then you can inside it out so it looks like this. So we're going to do that to the other side. And then you're going to place these pieces together and then sew along that edge. Again, I used the overlock machine to do this, but you can do a straight stitch as well. Now I'm going to create the drapery on the front. So using that other 10-inch panel, basically the same thing that we did to the skirt, you're just going to pin on the drapery to the front of the bandeau top and then sew along that edge. I just sew right over the pins so that everything stays perfectly in place. To perfect the drapery, I took a needle and thread and just stitched the hanging piece to the inside of the bandeau top. Now I'm going to work on the draping shoulder pieces. I just take those panels that are hanging over the edges, I just gather it up and put a stitch through it to hold it in place. I trim off the excess, fold it over, stitch it again, and create a channel for this little thread piece that I'm going to bring through it. This is going to tie around in the back to make these shoulder drapery pieces adjustable. Now I'm going to add a finishing touch to all the curly hem we created. I'm going to cut off the excess fishing line and then secure it all into place with this E6000 glue. And now for some final touches, I'm going to go ahead and cut the bottom skirt so that's just all smooth and lined up perfectly. And then I'm going to be adding some charms and chains to the top. I'm just going to stitch these on underneath to the bandeau top and to the belt. Here is the final and finished look of this outfit. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I hope you have a fun time creating your own magical dress.